Designers and Builders, where design meets construction. We explore groundbreaking trends and talk to the pros reshaping our spaces. For your dream home, workspace, or just great design inspiration, subscribe to Designers and Builders.
Hey, welcome to today's brand new episode of Designers and Builders. This is your host, Alyssa Olson, and I'd like to welcome Tim Roman, founder of Imperial Kitchen Bath. How are you doing today, Tim?
Very good. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. Really appreciate it today. So let's kick it off. Tell us about your backstory.
Absolutely. I migrated to the United States at the age of 12 from the former Soviet Union. And just normal kid growing up, kind of trying to find myself. Traditional school system was not for me. So I was constantly bouncing around ideas once I graduated high school and wasn't really sure what I was going to do. I got my associates in business management and it kind of just stopped there. Tapped out, started bouncing around different career paths and realized that I have a love for interior architecture, things in or around real estate, whether it's new construction, development, design, and started going down the rabbit hole in that industry. And I've worked at numerous dealerships, showrooms. I worked for different well-known vendors. And then in around 2015, I decided to start my own business.
Okay, 10 years in.
Yeah.
Yeah. How is it going from the starting point to now, both in terms of like your mindset? Like I saw online you're a serial entrepreneur, which I absolutely love. So how would you say in that 10 years you've transformed and your business has transformed?
I think it was just that. It was the former. The serial entrepreneurism is really through and through my core. I'm about 6 years in, I started dabbling in other things that are within the industry. So we have a construction arm that takes on some projects that we supply products for. And then that grew into, as recent as 2 years ago, it grew into a real estate investment arm where we build one or two spec homes a year and, using our own materials, using our own design team, kind of keeping it in-house, vertically integrated. And that's been a challenge. So from the beginning to end, I mean, it's just been a complete dream come true. I think I'd never imagined being here when I first started. When you first start, you're just so naive. You're like, hey, just, replacing your salary is good enough and, just being your own boss. But it was very challenging. There were 101 times where I wanted to quit and go back to work for somebody and not have this headache. But, I think year 2, 3 is when it really started to all make sense. Things started to get systematized. You really started to see processes and SOPs and employees come into the picture. And that's when it went from like owning a job to running a business. And that's when I think, ever since that moment, it's just been, hockey stick growth. Very humbled, very lucky to have the people around me that have been on this journey with me. And the area that we're in, the market that we're in is like a high tide. We're lucky to be in a very fluent environment, which helps when you're in the business of real estate. And yeah, it's been amazing.
Yeah. So, and you're primarily on the East Coast, right? Based out of New Jersey, but up and down the East Coast?
Exactly. Based out of New Jersey, we focus on the tri-state for our product supply arm. So we supply Connecticut, Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey. But for development, very niche, very honed into our county, actually. So it's Bergen County in New Jersey, northern New Jersey, which is probably the most affluent in New Jersey. So its concentration of capital here is unlike any other area in the state.
Did you, after you moved to the US, is that where you landed? So this is kind of home base for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I went straight to Bergen County, grew up here, went to school here, went to Bergen Community College. So yeah, just always been around this area.
Awesome. So aside from, do you rely on your SOPs or like, how do you go about getting your clientele?
Our Instagram is primarily the biggest lead source at this point. Also, having been in business for 10 years, there's a good chunk of business that is recurring revenue and referral based. But networking has been a huge one. I'm involved in a lot of associations. Just 2 days ago, we did a trade show where we had a booth, and it was the local interior design chapter association. So we're constantly networking with the trades, with real estate professionals, builders, developers, architects. So never kind of just sitting still. But digital footprint, I think, is the leader.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's how today works, right? Plus the
Absolutely.
word of mouth.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, very cool. So, and then tell me about your team. What's kind of the size? You have these multiple arms. What does your team sizing structure look like now? And what do you see moving forward for your growth?
Yeah, absolutely. So at the top, we have sort of the holding company, which is Roman Group. And then we have Imperial Cabinetry, which is kind of like what you see behind me. I'm currently in my showroom right now. So that's the distribution arm. We have 3 people here outside of myself that are fully employed. That's an executive assistant, admin, and a designer. So they help run Instagram and scheduling and deliveries and reaching out and communicating with clients and updating them. And then the designer is kind of doing the day to day. On our construction side and the development side, we have two project managers that are fully employed full time, and everything else is subcontracted.
So, given the expansiveness of your team, what does your day to day look like? If there were a typical, like in a given week, what would kind of be the range of what you are working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually very OCD systems driven. So I like my days to look exactly the same. So typically I'm usually out of the gym by like 7:30, 8 a.m., 8:30, I'm in the office. And from 8:30 till about 9:30, I'm triple checking the to-do list that I've made the night before. Just making sure I didn't make any mistakes, making sure that all the parties are uh, fully involved. Everyone knows what they're supposed to be doing for the day, who to reach out, what are the red flags, what are the problems, sort of the hot potatoes that we're working on today that really need to be addressed immediately. And then probably from like 10 to 12, it could be anything from solving live problems from sites, last minute questions from clients that really require my personal assistance, maybe a visit to the site. And so that could go into around like maybe noon, 1 o'clock. And usually from like 1 till the end of the day, it's all working on the business. I usually like to be in the office, locked in. If I'm on the road wasting time, because that means there's probably an issue and it's inefficiencies happening. So typically I like to keep myself locked in front of a desk. So from like 1 to 6, I'm usually working on the business.
Okay. Do you have, in those moments when you are trapped in the car, do you have a strategy for that? Like, are you doing phone calls or are you just doing kind of a personal break time? Like, always curious how you fill that space.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think I'm doing phone calls when I'm walking, when I'm, walking on my way to get a coffee, walking to the car. Like I really optimize every minute, every second. So calls, if there are any, but just like follow-ups or, those calls that didn't require a set appointment time. And if I don't have any of those, self-education, put on a good podcast, put on a good book, and just help with the.
Yeah. What are you listening to lately?
Currently, I have the All In podcast that I've been really intrigued about. It touches on a lot of macro topics, which I really didn't care too much about up until this point. But given that I'm in the business of real estate investment, I'm dealing with banks a lot. Interest rates are a topic. Capital markets. We're dealing with outside investors, and obviously things like inflation, geopolitics, all those things are very important. So you can try to kind of forecast and maybe not bite too much that you can chew, not take out a loan that's maybe right around the corner is going to be a little cheaper, maybe not build too many homes that are going to be sitting on the market way too long because of XYZ factor. So yeah, that one's been interesting. Outside of that, I usually have like a list of books that I just kind of go through. Just finished, oh my God, what is it? The Gain and the Pain? I forget the author. It's a book called Be in the Gain, Not in the Pain. So that was the most recent book.
Got it. And as I was researching you, I saw a reference to Who Not How. That was a recent one that I had finished
Yeah, that was a good one.
for sure. So I'm curious. just kind of go, it's very dynamic, all these things, and they're constantly changing, and you're gaming everything out all the time. But you started in 2015. So I'm curious, that kind of middle point of the pandemic, what were the pivots that you had to make during that time?
That was a really challenging time because in our industry, non-essential, you just stopped. There was nothing going on. People were not leaving their home. No one was renovating. People weren't buying things. And at that moment, I had the same staff that I have now, showroom overhead, a lot of overhead expenses, fixed expenses. So our burn rate was maybe around $25,000 a month and carry. So, for 3 months, nothing happened. That's $60,000 right there. So the first thing that happened was it started eating into my personal savings. That wasn't, after we burned the cash flow that we had available in the companies, it started going in a little bit into the savings. And then I was at a crossroads between letting people go and cutting back and trying to eliminate overhead, or keep the team, just optimize, strategize, do better with less, and kind of find the best path forward. I mean, that's what we did. So I didn't let go a single person throughout COVID, kept them all on. They were just all working from home, and everyone just kind of just went on overdrive. Like, what can I do better? How can I help? I see the sacrifice that you're making as a leader, as a company owner. I really appreciate that. I'm not going to forget this. What can I do? And in that moment, I think we had this bonding sort of experience, and our company culture kind of went in overdrive, went into the next level, and it really helped. I think the learning experience there was cutting is maybe the low hanging fruit in times like that, but it also could be a learning experience if you can actually weather the storm, if you can actually make it through. Hang on to the resources, hang on to the people, and you will come out the other side a lot stronger. I don't know where I read this, but uh, just many times that fail during pandemics and during recessions, an equal amount gets started. So, that speaks volume.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you feel like, I know you pivoted 2 years ago as well. Was there something that sparked that pivot for you?
No, actually, that was always the goal that I aspired to get for. When I started this company, the goal was to always be a real estate developer, to do bigger things. And a smart man sat me down once and he said, "Look, here, I will do a bathroom renovation first before you start to try to build homes." And I took that to heart. And what that meant to me was learn everything leading up to that point. And I became obsessive about learning the nuts and bolts in and out of the industry that allowed me to be a confident developer, real estate investor now.
Wow, that's so inspiring. It's like start small, grow bigger, piece by piece by piece, but you've also had this long-term vision for yourself and what you truly want.
Yeah.
So really, really appreciate your learning.
Yeah, the dirt and the clouds. The clouds is like the big goal, and the everything that you want to do, the tip of the mountain. And the dirt, it's like day to day, 1%, better yourself every day, do the small things that will add up to the big things.
Yeah, for sure. Not too different than your gym routine every morning, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So out of your range of things that you work on, what would you say challenges you the most and excites you the most?
Uh, Currently, it's definitely the real estate investment division. I mean, because there's something new to learn every day, new markets, financing, capital structures, investor relations, whole new world. This is borderline institutional level stuff where you have to, when you're raising capital, in some cases you're governed by the SEC, which is the federal government. So now you're dealing with a whole different level of organization that you need to keep up to and keep up with, a whole different accounting, legals. So that's been, I think, the biggest challenge most recently. Um, yeah, I would have to say that.
Yeah. So it always blows my mind when people kind of get to that level and there's just so many things that you have to learn. Do you have like a mentor or do you just lean on people? Like how do you approach those kinds of challenges?
Haven't had a mentor, but I'm obsessed with the concept of, learn something every day. Even if you better your performance or knowledge by 1% a day, that's 360 plus percent a year. So people underestimate how much they could do in a year, but overestimate how much they can do in a day. And that, I think, is what I take to heart. And I realize that it's baby steps. So while there's no mentor, luckily we're living in the era and time and place where like information is, readily available at your fingertips, especially today with AI, where literally, the Google search that would take me 30 minutes 2 years ago now takes 5 minutes. So a lot of resources that way, networking, and always trying to be the dumbest guy in the room. That's definitely something that helps. Not being afraid to ask questions, putting yourself in an environment where you can really learn a lot versus just kind of, socialize.
Yeah, for sure. And have there been any places lately? I know you said you had done a trade show, like other rooms that you've put yourself in where you feel like you really learned a lot and got a lot out of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was recently an event in Lower East Side of Manhattan that was put together by a real estate investment firm that we've worked with, that we know, and they got 50 people together. I think the smallest person in there, does developments of 50 to $100 million in volume. So these are big players, and the conversations were just different. And I think for me, it was eye opening because I like to think that I'm humble, and I kind of take small steps towards my goal. But in this room, a lot of these people kind of already heard my story, and they were like, look, you should just go for it. Just the bigger the better at this point. And I was like, well, no, maybe I'd take it slower. And that's kind of been my motto. They're like, no, you already did the hard work. Now it's just adding zeros to the transaction. And that was really eye opening because it kind of gives you the confidence boost hearing it from these people. Some of them don't even have the same experience that I had. They're just maybe we're in a better position, maybe come from a wealthy environment that allowed them to get to where they are quicker. But that was very cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. Yeah, that's just so inspiring to be around people like that have kind of like been through the ropes, or maybe not even necessarily, but you kind of exchange ideas. And I'm curious, what's your take on your own speed of growth? Are you full speed ahead, like do it as fast as you can?
Yeah, I struggle with the balance. I want to go as fast as possible, but that creates tension. That can create a bit of pain because then it just feels like you're trying so hard. And if the results are not there, you can be very hard on yourself. And at the same time, when you're going so fast, you forget to stop and appreciate how far you've already come. So I try to kind of keep this balance where I have sprints, maybe where I'll go like really, really hard and kind of stop, assess, analyze, but at the same time say, look, even if the sprint didn't work so well, look how far you've come, appreciate what you have now. And that's actually was what this most recent book that I read was about. Is the whole punchline is being the pain, not in the gain, which is, comparison is the thief of joy. So don't compare yourself to others, only compare yourself to the person you were before. And then if you are incrementally better than what you were yesterday or a month ago, then you're doing okay. And that's what I try to do.
Yeah, that's so powerful. Like that is truly the thing that we can control in life. So why not focus on that, right? Yeah. And then I also understand you were featured in a lot of magazines. You've been best of house, you've all these accolades, but you were also in a book.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I was featured in a book. It was a New York Times bestseller. It's called Crushing It by Gary Vaynerchuk. And I think it was just a total accident. This was early on in my career, probably like year 3. And I was a big fan of his, read all his books. And the prequel was called Crush It. And in that book, he talked about leveraging social media at a time where people didn't think of social media like that to build your personal brand, to build your business. And this is a time where Instagram was just like pictures of kids and food, and it wasn't really commerce that it is today. And he was already, this was like 2009 maybe, 2010, he was already talking about these things. So having read that book, I took it from A to Z, applied everything, and it really helped my business tremendously. And I made a post, like a really heartfelt post about like, oh my God, thanks so much to this book. It really changed my life. Here's how I applied what I applied, and here's what it got me. And his admin or somebody just sends me a DM like, hey, you just tagged, Gary Vee, and, is this true? Like, did you really learn so much from it that it helped you better your business? And can you prove that? I was like, yeah, absolutely. So they set up a call, and I thought it was just like maybe some research they're doing. I was just happy to help. And at the end of the call, they're like, all right, look, so the reason for this call is because we are gathering interviews of people who read his first book that were true success stories that we could feature in the next book. It's called Crushing It. And I was like, oh, wow, that's super cool. And they're like, so do you mind if we use your story? You might not get featured, but do you mind? And I was like, yeah, absolutely. And like, I didn't hear anything from them for like months. I already had forgot about it. And then like 7 months later, I get an email from a publisher with like legal documents asking me to sign a release that like I'm okay basically being featured. And it was like the spread. It was like 3 pages in the book about like my story and how I've, used all this information. After that book came out, I mean, people just started DMing me, and all these kind of publications started reaching out, doing podcasts. So it was a very cool experience in my life.
That is very cool. That's such a fun transformational point, not only for you, but also for the author, right? Like it's fodder for a whole nother book.
Yep.
Do you know if there's going to be another sequel to that or TBD?
Yes, TBD. There's supposed to be one that's called Crushed It. So Crush It would teach people how to crush it. Crushing It was about people who took that and are actually crushing it. And then Crushed It are like the ultra mega success stories who took, nothing and then build a 5, 10, 15, $20 million business.
So I guess for you, someone who's obviously in the phase of crushing it, at the end of your career, is there something that you would want to look back on and be like, yeah, I crushed it?
I think about this all the time already, and I think I've already passed that goal. Being an immigrant, um, especially coming from a communist, Soviet Union environment, you know, I've never even had a dreams of having a business, let alone be as successful as it is today. So technically, by my 12-year-old self standards and those boys' dreams, I'm blew past all expectations and all the goals that I had back then. So in that regard, I think I've already checked that box. So now it's like, okay, what does my present me want the 60-year-old me to look like? I mean, that's something that I still think about every day, but really just, I think a family legacy, something that my kids and grandkids could be proud of, where they could say, dad or grandpa came here, started with nothing, didn't really have college education. And, that is the American dream. So I'd like that to be sort of the story, the legacy, and that would be more than enough for me.
I love it. Makes me think of something a friend had said at grad school to me. She was like, you don't rest on your laurels rest on you.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's exactly you in a nutshell. And also coming from the USSR. So I mean, obviously remember that it was constantly on the news growing up. There was so much turmoil, so many things going on. Why, like, did your whole family move? Like, how did that work? How did that work for you?
So my mother's parents moved here in the 80s, and they got out as Jewish refugees because there was a wave of Jewish refugees that were essentially just let out of the Soviet Union, where America just said, look, we'll happily take these people because there was a lot of oppression going on. There was a lot of nationalism, and they left during that time. My mom at that time was very young. She didn't feel the need to leave. Life was going okay. And then when Soviet Union was at its end and right before it fell apart, it was just really, really bad. So she started thinking about moving, and little by little, me, my mom, my dad, my sister, we ended up following them. So it was kind of, you know, something that happened by force. I don't think it was always the goal or the idea. It just because, survival mode, and you wanted to provide for your children. My mom did the best she could, so she knew that she had this opportunity and she took it.
Yeah. And I feel like, do you feel like that also informs you? I feel like when you see opportunities, you take them. Do you feel like that comes from those family roots?
Yeah, absolutely. I am forever thankful that I am here. I worship the ground I walk on. Absolutely love this country and consider myself an American through and through because I grew up here. This is all that I know. And I am so thankful for everything that I was given here. This is a very magical place where dreams can come true. If you work hard enough and you put yourself in the right environment, you can absolutely achieve anything you want and be anything you want. And that is amazing. So I constantly keep that in mind, and it keeps me humbled, keeps me thankful. It doesn't let anything get to my head. No matter the level of success that I will reach, I think I will always be a 12-year-old immigrant boy that's just thankful to be here, and appreciates, every day.
Yeah. So between that 12-year-old boy and your current day self, what are the other things that inspire you? Inspire your work, your business, your life?
Yeah, I am, obviously inspired by building a family, obviously growing old and enjoying the fruits of my labor. Outside of that, I am a huge Formula One fan, have been since I was a young boy. And one of the big goals and inspirations that I have is to get into the sport as a sponsor of sorts. That's like my life, one of my big bucket lists in my life. So that's been like a huge inspiration. But I find inspiration anywhere, from business owners to a good parent that I meet to just, a good book or article. I really try to extract something everywhere. So I don't think there's just one thing, but I do like to use big goals as inspiration to keep driving me forward. And I think that's definitely one of them.
Yeah. And are you I did listen to one of your other previous podcasts. It sounds like you were invited to a Formula One event. Was that right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was lucky enough that I met a team owner on a plane one time. He was sitting right next to me, and we're just we had like 6 hours to burn, and we just started talking. And he saw that I was a big fan, and then he just kind of started asking about my life story, and he was just like fascinated about the come up story and the success story. And he was just like, "Hey, have you ever been into in the garages, like in the paddock?" And I was like, "No, of course not." And he, we exchanged numbers and I reached out to him and he gave me like a grand tour. And it was actually funny because the Netflix show, which is huge now, which is how everyone learned about Formula One, was being filmed at that moment. And I happened to be in the garage. So I'm in the Netflix show as well. So that was pretty cool. So I've been very lucky in my life.
Yeah. Well, as you should be, right? That's so cool. Yeah. No, I love that. I love all of these things that have aligned for you in your life and will continue to keep aligning. Um, I am curious in all of that. Is there something that you find lacking or struggle with, or something that would help you expand your capacity?
The one thing that I think every business owner struggles with is letting go. And I think that's just, we could all agree if you get 20 business owners in a room, true entrepreneurs, we're very protective of our ideas and, you know, who's going to do it better than me. And, I'll do everything and everything. Um, and I think that's the part that could always be better is learning how to let go more and more. And yes, of course, that happens naturally once you find really good people to bring in under you. But it's not always the case. Sometimes you can have someone that's really good, but maybe they don't share your vision and there's conflict there. Or maybe they share your vision, but they're not as fast as you. So there's constantly this push where you're trying to find like a clone, but that person probably doesn't exist, and if they do, they're like one in a million. So struggling with that letting go mentality, I think, is a constant battle that I can be better at, but I'm always trying to learn tips and tricks and put systems in place of how to do better there.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, at least you have the systems in mind. I feel like it can be so easy to just go through the grind and not have the capacity to step out of that into the bigger picture.
Yeah,
Just
for
really
sure.
appreciate that mindset. And then I'm curious, what else is on the boards for you, either project wise or future business wise?
Uh, right now, we have a interesting idea floating around with some of the investors that I work with of getting into experiential hospitality and looking for a piece of land somewhere, maybe in Vermont, upstate, Berkshires, Pennsylvania, and doing sort of like a luxury glamping concept, but that's centered around and focused on wellness. So sauna, steam, cold plunge, infrared, organic food, farm to table. I think a new era that's in front of us is disconnect culture. That I think is going to be a really hot topic moving forward, where, we've been so connected, so go, where even the younger generation, I think all across, are going to start to want to truly disconnect more and more, but not go like camping, because that's not for everyone. What if you had that with luxury environment, amazing food, and 2 hours away from the city that you live in? So that's a new concept that we're just kind of starting to whiteboard, but yeah, maybe it'll turn into something.
Yeah, I hope so. It's funny. I've been similarly hearing a lot of people having energy around that. Like even a friend who wants to build floating saunas and all these super fun things. Yeah. Do you feel like sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's already an evolving industry.
Yeah. And are there other things on your radar? Would you say the wellness thing is kind of like the hottest thing you would say is on the horizon, or are there other things on your radar?
Everything else is pretty conservative. It's kind of like not, I don't want to rock the boat too much. So our distribution business is growing steadily. Very happy with that. The construction development arm is growing steadily. Very happy with that. I mean, unless like a partner appears that we can maybe combine forces and multiply, I don't see the reason of like pushing that, because, sometimes pressure can do two things. It can create a diamond or burst a pipe. And I hate to gamble with that when I don't need to. So those two are steady. So I think for me on the horizon is just like something totally different, a new challenge, a new industry, something that I can take the experience that I have from all the other industries, but not be too far off.
Yeah, for sure. And then that also supports your love for learning, right? Keep learning new things.
Absolutely.
So I guess given your accolades, accomplishments, all the things that have landed in your life, what advice would you have either for others or for a younger version of yourself?
I think if we're talking business specifically, I think focus is one of them. Two is dedication. To once you get focused on something, give it a good amount of time before you give up. And a good amount of time could mean a couple of years. And that could be painful. You might want to quit. You might think it's not going anywhere. But if you pick your head up, 2 years later, you'll probably realize that you've already made a lot of improvements and you've already made something out of nothing. And the third one, I think, is constantly learn. Be open-minded, be open to networking, be open to ask questions. Don't try to be a know-it-all. Even when you think you mastered something, you probably haven't. There's someone better, sharper, faster that you can learn from. And having the mindset of always wanted to learn will always help in business, will always help excel and progress.
Yeah, there is no such thing as truly being an expert, right? There's always more to learn.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then one final question. So in the face of feeling like you want to quit something, how do you approach that? What do you tell yourself? What do you do in those moments to keep going?
Look back. The best thing that you could do is look back, because you can't connect the dots moving forward, like Steve Jobs said. You can connect them backwards, and that means that in the moment where you feel like quitting, even if you've accomplished 1%, you look back on that 1%, and that 1% should be used as positivity, that you can do something. You did do something. And now maybe you just need to take a breath, reassess, maybe step away for a little bit, clear your mind, just find a distraction, but then get back to it and get back on the horse and keep trying and keep trying. And then there's no better medicine when you're stuck, sad, you know, the kind of not sure, than to just go through it. Just pick up the pen, write things down, brainstorm, info dump, and really just kind of find that rhythm again. And before you know it, you'll forget that it ever happened, because there'll be plenty more times like that. And the better you get at kind of going through them, the faster you will be able to go through them next time.
Yeah. Love that. It's kind of like focused on what's the best and don't worry about the rest.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's, we can find a million things that are wrong with us. I mean, no one's perfect. And comparison is a thief of joy. You can jump on Instagram and see someone that's 16 years old in front of a Ferrari in Hawaii. And you're like, oh man, I'm a total failure. Like, I haven't done anything with my life. But like, that's the wrong thing to do. Instead, you don't do that. You only compare yourself to yourself, and you compare yourself to yourself yesterday. And if yourself today is better than yourself yesterday, then you're winning. You're already on the right path.
Yeah. Which you've always wanted. So
Yep.
thank you for sharing your insights, your expertise with the designers and builders community. Tim, can you let people know how they can best connect with you?
Absolutely. I think the best way is our LinkedIn, which is Timothy
Okay.
Roman. If someone's interested to learn more about one of the businesses on Instagram, the distribution arm is Imperial Cabinetry, and the development arm is Hudson Development.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. It's been awesome to connect with you. Thanks for being on the show. And yeah, hope you have a great rest of your day.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks, Tim.